Hey, welcome to Product Coffee. How do you describe the difference between products and solutions? And why is it that so many companies deliver too much of one and not enough of the other? Today, we're going to learn about those differences and how you can become the agent of change that your customers and your team may desperately need.
Jason said, we're going to talk about how to deliver new solutions without building new products. And the point of this, and when Jason did the introduction, he mentioned portfolio product management. And if you think about, the whole concept behind portfolio product management is don't worry about the individual product until we understand what it is we need to help customers accomplish. Then let's look at our portfolio and figure out how the collection of products, services, features come together to give customers an outcome. So that's the simple definition of portfolio management, which, in my mind is synonymous with business solution or solution management, if you want to call it that. So, before we get started today, one of the first real world experiences I had with delivering a new solution without delivering a new product. So this is back in the early 90s, back in my early product manager days. I worked for a financial software company. We had general ledger, accounts payable, AR, all that kind of stuff. So what was happening in the market at that time is corporate procurement or purchasing cards were kind of all the rage. And so the goal was, for big corporations, if, people want to buy stuff like less than $500, instead of cutting a purchase order for it and going through all that, you just charge it to a corporate card. So every department had a corporate card, which was beneficial to the department. It was also beneficial to purchasing. Unfortunately, accounts payable still bore the brunt of the work, because instead of getting, 5,000 invoices every month for all this little, nickel and dime petty cash stuff, they would get one credit card invoice with thousands of transactions on it. So we were talking to a couple of our customers at the time, and the subject came up about, it's like, we've got 7 or 8 or 9 people in accounts payable that it takes every month to enter these long credit card invoices. So I went, So we rung some people up at Visa, MasterCard, and Amex and said, hey, would you be willing to give us your file formats for your corporate procurement cards? And they said, sure. So they sent us an Excel spreadsheet, and our platform at the time had the capability to import all that data and actually validate it, right? And so it was, the credit card companies would do this by cost center. And so we already had what was called back then, I'm going to date myself, it was called a batch offline capability, right? So we already had that built into the product. We had the file formats, and we could import that in. And so we launched a corporate purchasing card solution that required no work on our part. It was already there. And we charged 25 grand for it. And it sold like hotcakes. Customers didn't even balk at it. We probably should have charged 50 grand for it, right? But that was literally, it was, I want to call it one little feature, but essentially building your entire accounts payable system offline to do all the validation, all that was a monumental effort. But since we already had the capability there, here's a new thing happening in the market. We already had a capability, right? All it took was a spreadsheet and a file format, and bingo, there's a solution. And we made a lot of money from it. And so, again, it helped customers get an outcome, which was, let's get these things in a hurry and not have to hire 7 or 8 or 9 people on the other side of the business to compensate for what we thought we were saving over here. So that's just one example, and I'm going to give you some today, just based on the market we're living in right now. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is products versus solutions. So people say, well, what's the difference? It kind of sounds like semantics. So the way I define it is products are what we build. Our products and services, that's what we do. Think of solutions as what customers do, okay? Your customers do things to serve their customers, right? So what is it they do? What's important to them? How do they create a better experience for their customers to make more money, right? Think of it that way. And so, again, a solution is something that makes the customer, and I'm going to emphasize the word quantifiably better, because the value has to be measurable at some level. If you give them things that help them get better at their business in some way that's quantifiable and important to them, you deliver a ton of value. It's a pretty simple equation. And again, the hard part about our job is, if I manage 2 or 3 products and I have 10 fellow product managers all manage 2 or 3 other products, we tend to look at the customer very myopically instead of huddling up as a team and taking a big picture view of the customer and then figure out how we divide and conquer across the portfolio. So let's talk about outcomes. So here's the thing. I grew up, anybody who's been in product management, we were all raised to go find and solve customer problems, right? And when it's all said and done, our products do have to solve problems. But if the starting point is looking for a problem, that can lead us down the wrong path. And again, having been through the school of hard knocks, I have solved legitimate customer problems with features, and they all said, yeah, it's a problem. But I solved problems that weren't that valuable in relative terms, right? And so that's the importance of outcomes is your customers have an all-you-can-eat buffet of problems. But you have to solve the ones that deliver outcomes that have some strategic value to the business. And that's why starting with the end in mind simplifies everything. Because if you just understand what they're trying to accomplish and why, then their biggest problems will hit you, right between the eyes. And you won't have to go out and sort of figure out which problems are important and which ones aren't, because they will automatically rise to the surface. Okay, so when we talk about creating solutions, don't do this, right? It's not which of my products go well together. It's not bundling, right? Now, the end result might be you're going to bundle some things together, but a lot of people start from the product and say, well, we should bundle all these things together because they're very well integrated and they go together. And that's great. And that might be the end result. But the point is, don't put them together just because they go well together. Put them together because they deliver an outcome that is far more valuable than any one of those products could deliver on its own. And that's really the essence of a solution. Okay, so do this. Start with the highest priority outcomes that are common across a market segment. So whether you segment vertically or horizontally, right? And a horizontal segment would be like HR or finance or IT, a vertical segment, healthcare, retail, banking, whatever. Start with things that are common across a market, things that everyone wants to accomplish, right? So if you're going to go horizontal, every company wants to hang on to its best people right now, right? That would be something that's horizontal across all businesses. If you were going to go vertical, then it's specific to each industry. I'm going to give you a couple examples that everybody can be familiar with here. But start with things that are common, outcomes that are common across every market segment. So one of the clients I'm doing work for now, they have a sales enablement solution that's integrated into Salesforce like CRM, right? And they're sitting in a really pretty spot right now because in this pandemic economy, new logos are hard to come by. So everyone wants to get more strategic about how they grow revenue and wallet share in their existing accounts, right? So it's cross-sell, upsell, identify opportunities. And so when you look at that outcome, and it's common across the market, and this company targets mostly high-tech companies, they're all trying to accomplish the same things. By and large, they all have the same obstacles. And so it becomes pretty easy to position the solution they already have. So they're sitting in a space right now where, unfortunately, what's happened in the economy has created an uplift for their business. Good for them. And so they're trying to seize the opportunity. So great for them. All right. Determine why those outcomes are so critical to the customer's success, right? And so it's all about, I call it the second and the third why, right? So I say, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? And my customers, when they call me for training, what are you trying to accomplish? Well, in some form or fashion, they want to get better at product marketing or product management, right? So I already know that. The more important question is, why is it so important now that you're willing to invest money in it? And I never get the same answer to that question. Because that is company specific. It's, competition. It's, we're getting acquired. We got spun off. It's about the culture of the, there's just a million and one reasons. I'll call it the second and third why, right? So when you're out talking to your customers, you understand what they want to accomplish as it relates to your products. They all pretty much want to accomplish the same thing. It's why is that so important to accomplish now that you're willing to invest money in it? And then you get the real answer. That's the strategic why. Then it gets real simple. What's stopping you and why? And the other question I like to ask is, okay, if I wave my magic wand, what's the ideal solution look like? And again, more often than not, it looks pretty similar to whatever it is you're offering as a solution. So it all works out pretty well. So again, this taking an outcome-based approach to solutions, it just simplifies everything, and it reinforces the collaboration across product management teams, because I know what it's like to compete with your fellow product managers for resources, because we all have things we want to do and our product is more important, and we think it's more important, and the value of it's more important than everything else. When the truth of the matter is, what's best for every product typically isn't the best thing for the customer or for your own organization. So that's why everybody's got to get together, look at the big picture of what's valuable to the customer, and then figure out what role every product plays in that, and work together. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of restaurant and shopping examples here, since we all like to eat out and go shopping. Okay, so I went out to Google, did a little research. McKinsey just published a report earlier this year, which is, what are the top priorities of restaurants and retailers, because they've been impacted probably more so than most other industries, the hospitality industry, with the pandemic, right? So top priorities: convince customers it's safe, grow off-premises revenue, which is a fancy phrase for carry-out and delivery, and improve operational efficiency. And in some cases, the operational efficiency is about cost, right? So if you think, still in a lot of cases, restaurants can only seat at half capacity. So you got to compensate for that revenue somehow, which would be takeout and delivery revenue, and then your operational costs. The more you can cut out of that, the more you're gonna profit, right? So if you look at pretty much, 80-20 rule, 80% of restaurants are trying to accomplish these three things. What's stopping them? Okay, and why? And again, you'll see some very common denominators across the industry. I tell people a story. There's a great restaurant. So I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. After almost 30 years in Atlanta, I moved to the northeast suburb of Greenville. Love it here. So there's a great Mediterranean restaurant here called the Pita House. They've shortened their hours down. Food is fabulous. Most of their business is probably takeout anyway. They've got some sit-down eating there, but not necessarily ambiance in terms of environment. So a lot of their business is carry-out. They have a 2-line phone. And if both lines are busy, you get some weird voicemail recording, and you're not able to order online. And so every time my wife and I get carry-out, I think, man, and I know the owner, I've gotten to know him pretty well. I just think, man, if you can order online and do some different things, he could be making twice the money he's making, even in his shortened hours. And I hate to see those missed opportunities, right? So then it comes down to, okay, if we're going to eliminate, right, maybe 1 or 2 of these obstacles fall into our wheelhouse, right? If we're going to eliminate those obstacles, which products and services have to come together to do that? Sometimes it's one product. It could even be one feature in one product. But in most cases, if it's going to deliver, strategic value, there's a couple of things that are going to be involved there, right? So this is where product managers, let's huddle up and say, okay, how are we going to help restaurants grow off-premise revenue, or improve operational efficiency, or do things to convince customers it's safe, because that's what's important to them, okay? And then you name the solution after, or you name it relative to one of these goals, and you market it that way, and your messaging is pretty much already done, right? Let's go to retailers. So retailers, they want to expand delivery mechanisms, right? So instead of just, UPS, FedEx, whatever, they're looking to stuff like using Uber or courier services to get stuff to you same day. Bring the in-store experience online. So I love Apple Pay. I use it anytime I can. And what I love now is, since I'm buying more stuff online, is when you go to, you go online, you place your order, you fill your cart. I love it when I see the Apple Pay button, because I don't have to fill out the form. I don't have to set up an account. It just says, double click. And since I have an Apple Watch here, I just double click the side of my watch and bingo, done. It's got my name, my address, my credit card, my email. Simple. You talk about bringing the in-store experience online. That's a big one right there. And then obviously optimizing the physical store footprint. Retail has been downsizing for some time, even before the pandemic. Now it's a matter of, what should we put in the store to, things people want to buy most often, highest margin items, things like that, right? So again, it's a matter of what's stopping retailers from meeting these goals, achieving these outcomes, and where are our products relevant or services, okay? And when you look at it like that, it just tends to net everything out and make it simple. And a lot of these debates and discussions about what to do and how to do it, just it puts some very nice structured guardrails around getting from point A to point B. Okay, so market and sell the outcomes and the obstacles, not the problems, features, and benefits, right? And you could say obstacles is a synonym for problem, which it is. But too often what we do when we market stuff is, hey, and I see tons of customer testimonials, and they all start with, here's the problem, here's the solution, right? Here's the problem, here's what happened, here's a solution. But most of these customer testimonials don't have, here's what the customer was ultimately trying to accomplish, here's why it was strategic to their business, here's why they couldn't get there, and then here's how our solution was relevant, right? Which puts a lot more value context around that story. And so again, if you market and sell that, you're basically telling customers what they're already thinking. It's great for your credibility because it's like, hey, these folks know exactly what I'm thinking. Their product must be great. Okay, so let's put this in context, right? Someone says, well, hey, what solutions are we going to deliver for the remainder of 2020 or even into 2021? We're going to help restaurants grow the volume and profitability of their delivery business by eliminating the need for human interaction in the ordering and payment process. Okay? See how I explained that solution without ever mentioning a feature? We're going to help retailers bring more of the in-store experience online by making the payment process as easy as holding a phone or a watch up to the terminal at the checkout. That's your positioning. It was done before you built the solution, right? So let's talk about how many companies do product management and why it's not conducive to solutions, right? So it's that time of year, everyone's doing their 2021 planning. Let's look at our own strategic and financial goals for 2021. And then they come to all you folks and go, okay, product people, give me your priorities, give me a plan. And here's the part that where this gets bad is if every one of you come up with a plan, and product managers do a very good job of this, you come up with a plan that supports your strategic and financial goals, which means everybody is right. Okay? The problem is everybody can't be right and get the resources you need, right? That's where the rub comes in, okay? But nevertheless, it means we're all working in silos and if it contributes to our goals, it's a good plan. However, every product might be going in a slightly different direction. And this is where it's not good, right? And then, like I said, what's best for every product isn't the most valuable thing for the customer, which usually means it's not the best thing for us. Okay, so this is what I call, inside-out product management, where it's about us first, and let's figure out relative to what's important to us, let's figure out what we can do for the customer, which is kind of backwards, right? The approach we would like to see is outside-in product management, which is what's important to the customer and why, what are their priorities, okay? What are the outcomes and the obstacles that are critical to them? Where do our products have relevance? And then can we take them to market in a way that supports our strategic and financial goals, right? Can we monetize those? Okay, and if we can't monetize the most important thing to the market, let's go to plan B and look at the second most important thing and say, okay, can we do that and make money for our market share, our wallet share, whatever your goals are? It's just a lot easier. It gets rid of the silos, it gets rid of the competing priorities, it gets rid of the constantly changing priorities, because again, if product management works together, shiny object syndrome, you can keep it to a dull roar because it's pretty easy to quantify your revenue potential, do this when you do it by market and by solution, as opposed to trying to justify the ROI in every product, because, anybody that's halfway good with a spreadsheet can come up with a financial justification to make anything look good, okay? And so now it becomes a matter of, well, here's what's most important to customers in this market, and if the shiny new object doesn't deliver more value than that, then it's like, thank you very much, we'll consider it at some point later in time. Okay, so if it's more valuable to the customer, 80% of the time it's more valuable to you. Always start with what's important to the customer, and chances are it's going to work out in your favor. All right, one plug for Proficientz. If you like this approach, you can get it on demand. 1 month subscription. We're keeping our COVID pricing intact. It's $249 for 1 month. It includes a certification exam. And then we're also doing, live classes, virtual on site, very much like this using Zoom meeting. So with that, I will stop. Jason, I'll throw it back to you and we can have a discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, John. I know I've had some conversations with some of the folks on the call today around some of these topics, actually. Specifically, one of the things that you mentioned a moment ago was how taking a portfolio level view helps to combat the shiny object syndrome. And I know that is something that will be relevant to a lot of folks on the call. We've talked about the hippo, who is the highest paid person, and how their opinion tends to sometimes drive product direction. And they find something that's very interesting to them. And how do you use that portfolio view, John? How do you use that in a very conversational way to refocus leadership to think in a more portfolio focused manner as opposed to a product silo manner?
That's a great question. And so what I have learned is I'm going to divide product management into two parts. There's the strategy and planning part, and then there's the execution part, right? The strategy and planning part really has nothing to do with the product. Okay, think of it that way. And again, 80-20 rule. The strategy and planning part is all about what's valuable to the customer, why it's valuable to them. And if your core competence, you're in a position to deliver value to that customer. So very little of the strategy and planning is about the product. When it comes to the execution, then the product goes obviously to the top of the food chain, because now we have to make sure the products can do what they're supposed to help customers get the outcomes by eliminating the obstacles. So the hardest part about this is, and it goes all the way up to the CEO, is we tend to, our starting point, if we're a product or service company, is always what we do, not what the customer does. And that is the hardest thing to get over, because we all want to think what we do is the center of the universe, and we should be passionate about what we do. But trust me when I tell you, it gets so much easier when you just put what you do aside for a minute, right? Compartmentalize it, put it aside for a minute, and think about what's most important to our customers and why, and then where do we have some relevance. And the strategy and the planning and the overall prioritization gets really easy.
One of the challenges with making that shift to the customer focus that I often see companies and leaders overcorrect on is they go to a very literal, reactive customer response. Customer says I want a faster horse. By golly, I'm going to breed a faster horse. How have you seen success in making sure that as you're driving that shift away from a technology focus to a customer outcomes focus, that you don't overcorrect or immaturely correct and start taking a literal response to every voice of the customer response?
Yes. So the rule of thumb there is customers know more about what they want to accomplish than what they need, okay? And we too often make the mistake of asking customers, what are your problems or what do you need? And we take their answers literally. And we end up with, like I said, something that solves a legitimate problem. We release it to the market and they're like, nah, that's nice. As opposed to what's the outcome, right? All customers know what they want to accomplish. And if we're not talking to people who can tell you what the end game is and why it's important to the company, we're probably talking to the wrong people. Okay, and so it's all rooted in the conversations we have with customers. And I watch this when people do sales discovery, right? Leading the witness. Hey, Jason, tell me about what some of your problems are with product management and shiny new object syndrome. I mean, I know what the answer is going to be, right? Oh, hey, I can solve that problem, instead of saying, why is it so important to solve that, Jason, in your company? I'm going to get a much different answer, right? So part of this is we have to have structured customer meetings that have nothing to do with issues of the day. There are no sales situations involved. It's like, we want to talk to you once or twice a year about what your priorities are and why they're important to the success of your company, without talking about me and my product or service. I just want to know, clean slate, unbiased, unfiltered, what are your top priorities? What's landed in your lap? Why is it important to you? And again, talking to the heads of the departments where your products are, you'll get some great answers to that question. Right? When I ask VPs or SVPs of products, and I ask the question this way, okay, there's something big going on above you. What's landed in your lap? What are you being asked to do in product management? Why? And I get a very different answer than tell me what you're trying to do with product management.
I know a lot of our conversation is really coming primarily, at least in this context, from a B2B product management perspective. That being said, the questions that John's asking and the conversation that John's suggesting are very much in alignment with the had last week with Eric Holtzclaw, which is out on the YouTube channel right now. So if you missed the session on research and ethnography, you can pick that up, and it really kind of blends this gaining that understanding of the customer with delivering on the outcomes that they need together very nicely. So who else has questions for John today or wants to add perspective to the discussion?
So John, one of the things I know we've worked with in the past and some of the companies that we've had experience with is some of the larger organizations that maybe have more, let's call them more mature products, periodically go through stages of transformation, either as an org or as a product, and can struggle to fit their technical debt or their replatforming projects or the transformation from an old architecture to a new architecture into this way of thinking, into this model. How have you seen those companies fit those types of transformation projects into this approach?
The real answer is they struggle with it, and I'll go through the, everyone's re-architecting a platform. At some point in time, companies are, re-architecting a platform. And there's always this notion that the new platform is going to solve all the ills of the old platform, right? And so when I'm talking to the heads of development, they are starved for, tell me what this platform has to help somebody accomplish, right? I can build a new thing that looks just like the old thing, but why would we do that? Okay. And so again, I'll start with the customer, and that customer could be parts of your internal organization, right? If you're a SaaS company, or it could be the customer organization, but in some form or fashion, whatever technology platform you're on right now, it's not conducive to helping internal or external customers accomplish something. And so I know I sound like a broken record here, but even when you're re-architecting a platform, we have to put some broad use cases around that to say, right now, the current technology does not enable us or our customers to do something that's really valuable. And so we have to start with, here's what we want this new platform from a pure business standpoint. We have to build a platform that's going to help customers accomplish this by doing this, which our current technology does not support. And so again, it's that upfront context that we don't invest nearly enough time in, and we throw all of our time and effort into trying to figure out the right features, when if we spent more time up front, the features would be much easier to figure out, and we would develop them faster on the back end.
I think
because if you don't have that context, you're in ready, fire, aim mode to some extent.
Right. No, I think that's helpful context, that whether we call them customers or stakeholders, it can be, they don't always have to be external. It could be internal. We just have to be very clear on what those objectives and outcomes are, whether they're the objectives and outcomes we're looking for our business or for the customer's business.
Yeah, and there are a number of companies right now who are moving into this product-led model, which means the customer onboarding has to be a hands-off, self-serve process, right? And so many of our software platforms are not conducive to that. The implementations are long and they're expensive, and the time to value for the customer is not acceptable, right? So everyone's trying to shorten that process down, which constitutes a lot of re-architecting of the technology.
Yeah, so I was talking to John. We are reshaping from a traditional, I guess, product management style. We are a healthcare provider, and really trying to align. We've got a new CTO that came in recently to our company, reshaping sort of the way we're organized from a traditional product side to what he considers more platform-based, realigning to the business, making sure we've got all the roles filled to support the systems and services underneath what we're considering a platform. So more of just a mention. I don't know if any of you are going through a similar transition at all, but if you think of a platform, for example, like corporate solutions, we've got another one for revenue cycle management, one for our patient and referral engagement, and then another system for logistics and inventory. And then underneath each of those platforms, we've got what we consider product groups. So what products are underneath those platforms. And then underneath those, it's the systems that will support and drive those. So our platform leaders, similar to me as a traditional product manager, product leader, whatever you want to call it in your organization, but just more of a reshaping and aligning to our internal businesses. A lot of what we do supports internal end users, while we've also got a market-facing patient engagement and how we engage with our referral physicians, doctors, and EMR vendors. But interesting sort of conversion, and it's been a learning for me, but I like the way it's heading, and I was asking John about it. He supports it, thinks it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think the takeaway there is Paul and his colleagues who are leading the platform areas mirror the business functions of the customer. And I think that's like, you should know the business of your customer as well as you know your product. And that structuring like that is conducive to making sure you're the expert on that and you bring that into the organization.